I'm going to get right to the Draymond situation, and I'll address that, and then we can talk about the game. He is going to come back to practice on Thursday. He's been fined. He will not be suspended. I expect him to play Friday in our last preseason game and on opening night. We have spent the last week in deep discussions with all of our key figures in the organization, including Jordan and Draymond, of course, Steph, all of our players, Bob, myself. And I can tell you there have been a lot of conversations, individual, one-on-one discussions, players-only discussions, everything that you can think of, all the different combinations that are possible to have in a conversation. We've had them. It's been an exhaustive process. We feel like we have a great feel for our team. You know, we've got a lot of continuity on this team, so Bob and I know our players extremely well, and we feel like this is the best way, after assessing everything, for us to move forward. It's never easy. No matter what decision you make in a situation like this, it's not going to be perfect. This is the biggest crisis that we've ever had since I've been coach here. It's really serious stuff. We're not perfect. You know, our team isn't perfect. Bob and I have definitely made our share of mistakes over the years, but we're going to lean on the experience that we have together, over the last 9 years, and trust that this is the best decision for our team. We have a lot of work to do, all of us, players, coaches, Bob in the front office, but we're committed to doing that work together and to making this a really successful season. I'm not going to talk about the fine other than to say he has been fined, but I won't talk about the amount on that, but I'm willing to take any questions at this point.
Steve, you mentioned it is the biggest crisis the team has faced. Draymond did get suspended for a previous crisis, his incident with Kevin. Why wasn't he suspended for this?
You know, every situation is totally different. And we don't look at everything in a vacuum and say, all right, well, now we did that here, we got to do that there. We would hope that we've developed enough equity, with the experience we have with our fan base, with the people watching over the last decade, that people can trust us that we've really put a lot of thought into this decision. And as I said, we feel like this is the best way for us to move forward. The discussions have been really important, and in particular, those that involve Draymond and Jordan together. So when Bob and I assessed everything, we decided that this was our choice.
You seem to intimate there Draymond and Jordan have come together for a conversation with you guys.
Yes.
Was that maybe the biggest conversation within the last, week or whatever?
And a lot of big ones, but yeah. Jordan obviously had to be involved in this, and the players have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Steph has been working like crazy to try to figure out the best way to move forward. So he's been organizing some of these conversations. And Jordan and Draymond got together and had a great discussion that I think will help us move forward. And so after this entire week of everything and just assessing everything, this feels right.
Was that today? That conversation today,
no,
yesterday?
No, in the last couple of days.
Gotcha.
Do you consider this crisis over, or is there still a lot of work to do just emotionally?
I think there's work. I mean, we take great pride in what we've built here. The continuity, the culture, and there's no way around it. That culture has been damaged by this incident, and so you have to work to repair that. You have to find that vibe again every day. the beauty of this game and what our team has been about is finding that joy in the game, but also within the team, with the relationships, with the goal, with the collective in mind. It's when it's right, like it was last year, like it's been many times, you can feel it. And when it's wrong, and you guys have watched us, there have been some times where it has been wrong. You can see that, you can feel that. So we got to work hard internally to try to regenerate the vibe that we need, because we know, we've lived this, you don't win championships on talent alone. It takes chemistry, it takes a collective will and a trust, and that has to be rebuilt right now.
Is there any kind of sense of disappointment, or do you feel like it's part of the job that you have to, work on all these relationships you have with the players?
No, this is the job, and it's actually part of the job that I love. Now, not this incident, but being able to share these relationships with our players, especially when you're with someone for a long period of time, that's the fun part. But as we've talked about, just like with a family, there are times where you've got to get through some difficult stuff, and that's what we're going to have to do.
Steve, we obviously haven't talked to Jordan, but I wonder, we've seen him play well the other night, saw him practice the day of, practice late, when you guys have been out there. What can you share, if anything, about the way he has handled this situation? He's the guy who was front and center and in a challenging spot. His voice obviously mattered a lot here. What sort of tone did he set, and what part did he play, and where you guys got to today?
Well, I will let Jordan speak for himself when he speaks to you guys, which I think will be soon. But what I will say, my observation of Jordan is that he's an incredibly mature young guy. I think we've seen that on the basketball side with his work ethic and his ability to work through, his rough rookie season and go to the G League bubble and do everything to get where he is now. It takes a lot more than just talent. So this is a pretty special young guy. It was already reported after the incident, he worked out for another hour on his shot. Came out, whatever it was, a couple nights later, and, scored 15 straight points at one point. I think he's cool. Like not much phases him. And I think that's part of why we're going the way we're going, because we know that he's fine. We know that he's willing to move forward. He's willing to basically get back out on the floor with Draymond and go to work.
Coach, we know what Draymond has meant to this team on the floor, but he's had a number of incidents with his temper, this one being the most severe. How can you be confident that these incidents are at an end, particularly when he didn't face any formal consequences for what happened here?
Well, it's fair. Any criticism that we face here is fair. Draymond, I would say, you guys all know from covering him for a long time, he sort of, lives on the edge. And as far as, his spot on our basketball team, he's always right in the thick of everything. And a couple times in his career, he has crossed the line. He crossed the line with Kevin, whatever year that was, and he crossed the line the other night in a worse fashion, much worse fashion. So, as I said, I would hope that everybody would respect the fact that we feel like we know Draymond and this entire group very well, and that while this is not an easy decision, we feel like this is the best decision we can make going forward, and I trust Draymond that he will, stay on that edge and not go over it.
You spoke about having to rebuild, the culture and the trust, and I guess it's kind of a follow-up to that because Draymond does bring a lot of fire. is there any concern or thought on how he brings that fire and how that might now be received if, players see him, especially new players that haven't been here for his entire career?
I think that's a huge part of this. We've got all these young guys out there. They don't know him, and they, the vets, they understand Draymond. The young guys are just getting to know him, and Draymond has to build relationships with those guys, and that's a big part of this process. And I will let Draymond speak for himself on that, because it's really a question for him. But as the coach, as the one who presides over all this, I am going to pay close attention to our young players and how they look at Draymond and the mentoring, and because it's crucial for our team this year and going forward.
Are you guys still investigating the cause of the leak, or
Yes.
the video leak?
Yeah.
Do you feel close on that? Are you going to announce that publicly?
Yeah, that won't be anything that I'll discuss.
Gotcha.
Coach, ring night is 1 week from tonight. How much did that play a factor in the decision, wanting to have everybody on hand in a celebration next week?
Again, we just sort of took everything in the totality. It was not something that Bob and I talked a lot about. It was more, all the discussions that we had with the players, and that especially the players had amongst themselves. And so this was really a group decision with our key guys, with our veteran players who have been around for a long time. They needed to be ready to move forward, and they're ready. So that was the consideration.
Steve, how critical was, Kevon Looney in the decision-making process and the kind of leadership that you needed with Draymond not being in there?
Loon is incredible. This guy has so much wisdom. He's so quiet that if you don't pay attention, you may not realize that he has become the moral compass of our team. He's a special human being, special. And he was a key instrument in everything that we've had going the last week to try to, get things back on track. I'll ride with Loon forever. This is a special man.
Steve, was suspension on the table even in the last few days? Was that something discussed, or was that kind of put off that you weren't going to do that fairly early on?
Everything was on the table, but I think the biggest thing was we needed time to breathe. This was really raw the first couple of days. I think, in hindsight, we could have done some things differently, in the first couple of days, and just to get everybody away from the gym and calm down a little bit. But I think what we all needed was to step away and then start connecting and start really talking, and that was what we did.
Coach, moving forward, you had a dominating performance tonight. Your new free agent acquisition, Jermichael Green, had a great game. Your young players had great games. Your thoughts?
Beautiful night of basketball. Really fun to watch. Ron Adams grabbed me on the walk down the stairs, and he said, "This is an amazing group of young players," and it really is, top to bottom. We have so many good guys here in training camp. Our front office, Kent Lacob, his whole group, who do most of the scouting for our free agent camp players and Santa Cruz players. They've nailed these guys. Really a wonderful group of players, and tonight was just fun to watch. The ball was moving, players were moving. Beautiful basketball.
Coach, what has Draymond been doing? I heard he's been working out on his own, but what can you give some input on what he's been doing? And is there any worry that once you guys leave Chase Center, once you go on the road, that you're probably going to hear some stuff that is going to constantly just bring this back?
Yeah, that will be nothing new for Draymond. So, he's been working out every day. coming in, in the afternoons after the team has gone and getting his work in, getting his conditioning. And he came into camp in good shape. He had a great first week. The 2 games in Tokyo, he was fantastic. And then all hell broke loose. So, we have to pick up the pieces, and that's what we're doing.
Last week, Monty asked you about your level of trust with Draymond, and you said no comment.
Yeah.
Pretty pointedly.
Yeah.
I'll ask you now, what's your level of trust with Draymond?
I think, the reason I was sort of pointed and saying no comment is because I didn't want to talk about anything that was private with our team because everything was so raw. That wasn't a no comment meaning a slight at Draymond. And I realized as soon as I said it, I said, oh, that was the wrong thing to say, because a no comment sometimes has sort of a hidden meaning behind it, or a not so hidden meaning. My no comment was, I'm not talking about this. I was so angry about the leak. I was so angry that everything made it out because, as I said, that creates the firestorm. If you're able to handle things internally, it's just much easier. So I was angry about the leak, and that was the gist of the no comment. So the second part of the question, I'll go back to, Draymond and I have been together for 8 years. We've had plenty of run-ins. We've won championships together. We've lost championships together. We've been through an awful lot together. I trust him. He broke our trust with this incident, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because I think he's earned that. And I think our team feels the same way. So he knows he needs to regain that.
Steve, you've talked about the depth on this team, and Draymond is obviously a big part of that, and been one guy who's been a tutor to many of these young guys. Going forward, though, what do you think you have with the guys coming off the bench behind Steph, Clay, Draymond?
We've got a whole bunch of good players, and it's going to have to sort itself out in terms of what the rotation looks like. We haven't seen Clay yet. Draymond's missed the last couple of games. But you look out there tonight, boy, Dante DiVincenzo can play. Moses Moody can play. James and J.K. have come so far in the last year. It's really exciting. And then you get, JaMychal, who's a proven pro, who can knock down threes and great rebounder, tough defender. We got a bunch of depth, and I'm confident that it will sort itself out because over the 82-game season, everybody eventually gets their chance, and we're going to keep working with our young guys, regardless of how much playing time they get. They're going to be developing every single day in practice too.